In this one, I'm going to talk about smoking weed. I can't really, I think each of us has to make a decision on stuff like that for themselves. I can only tell you about my experiences, and it's not. I'm not for it. I'm not against it. I'm very, very open-minded about drugs and shit. About all I can say. A friend of mine did a vlog on it, and boy, I did smoke weed a lot, and when growing up, and later, much later, gonna have me a cup of redneck high tea. It occurred to me, a lot of people that are, and I was Mr. Better living through chemistry, and pot is a gift from God, excuse me. I was one of those guys for the longest time. I'm still kind of for it, and kind of against it for me. I'm open-minded, like I said, but the thing that weed, it struck me years later, is that they talk about paranoia and stuff, and a friend of mine once said he didn't smoke pot. He was kind of in his later 30s, and I still did a lot. I grew it. When I growing up on a ranch, man, I grew a bunch and made a lot of money with that. And I even had a farm in my attic at one time. I was the only kid at school that always had weed, a very popular lad, But a friend of mine said, I said, why don't you smoke weed anymore, dude? And he goes, well, it just makes me feel like everybody else has a suit of armor on, and I'm naked, and that's classic kind of paranoia, that sort of that way to introspective feeling. And God knows I love a good high, and smoking weed, any kind of high, in fact, a good one anyway. Not drinking especially, but I became an alcoholic when I couldn't get other stuff, mainly to wean off the withdrawal from morphine and Xanax and Valium, about 42 drugs I used to take. But that kind of paranoid feeling in business, I had to quit smoking weed because it just made me like, instead of going, look, guys, if you're going to bring this project into my studio, it's going to easily be $300,000-$500,000. I can give you a good estimate. We can start now at $490,000. Stuff like that, confidently. But stoned, I would be like, well, you guys can kind of sort of come in and maybe it'll work out. I wasn't able to really, be confident and present my case. And, as far as spirituality and stuff, I'll tell you the best story on spirituality. And I definitely believe there's a rhyme and reason in the universe. The way I believe it, in my mind, have figured out the way the universe functions. Whether anybody else wants to go with that, I don't really care. But it's the kind of thing where, I'll tell you a story. I was clean and sober at 21 years at one time, and in the first 3 years, I just opened a studio in Hollywood, and some idiot had painted with oil-based paint some dumb flowery mural on the wall, wall painting, covered all the walls in the room that I had, and it wouldn't cover it kept bleeding through with white paint. So a friend of mine, Mick, who's now dead from drug addiction, coolest guy I ever met anyway, he said, go get some Kills paint. Kills will cover it up. So I went in this room, and I didn't want the landlord to see I was painting in there. They didn't want me to change anything at that point. That was before I gave them a little scratch to do whatever I pleased. But I was in there painting, and with Kills paint, what I didn't know was the kids buy that stuff to huff it. And I was just painting away in a small room, 10 by 17 room, and I started feeling kind of funny, and I hadn't been stoned in several years, like 3 years at that point, on anything, and would spend the next, many, many years clean and sober before I fell off again and drank and used. But anyway, I got stoned, and I mean rock solid, balls to the wall, stoned on that paint. And I didn't notice it because I was busy. I was sweating and busy and painting. And then all of a sudden, when I opened the door and the fresh air hit me, I just saw like flowers and green dragons and shit, and I was feeling like really sort of out of myself totally. I was like above myself. And next thing you know, I fell down on the ground, and I was laying there with my face comfortably in the dirt, my tongue probably, how beautiful everything, But also I was terrified. A terrifying feeling came over me because I realized, like, and the crux of this story is how I understand spirituality and how I understand my connection with everything and how that works when I'm not fucked up. And so I was on the ground, and anyway, a feeling came over me of terror. First of sort of pleasantness, and I was hallucinating and hearing and seeing things and just fucked up, To give you a technical term, I was fucked up. But what happened was a feeling of terror came over me, and I thought, oh my God, I've lost. And they call it God consciousness or your conscious contact or whatever. Really, it's the way that evolution and the progression of man and mankind are we were meant to be the natural way, Anyway, I thought, oh my God, I can't feel God anymore, if you want to call it that. You could call it that and be spot on, but it's really for me more of a connection that is not cut by some chemical with the universe. I'm functioning in sync with it, And I was so terrified because I thought, I can't feel God anymore, And I realized, oh, that's what those fuckers were talking about at AA. The most valuable thing I have is like a consciousness of what is going on around me at all times. And I remember laying there, and I thought, I later told a friend of mine, I said, man, I wouldn't want to have died there because I don't want to when I die, I want to be fully sober and aware and understand what's happening and embrace it. I'm not afraid of it anymore at all. And like that, but, when they talk about that God consciousness or whatever, and I you can call it God to be convenient. It's even bigger than that for me. It's no religion contains the concept I have of this thing in it. But it's kind of like if you lose touch with the stuff that you're doing and the things that you feel and all of that thing, you're given a certain rock to push up a hill every day. And if you sort of stop pushing the rock and step aside to get high on something, you're not in touch. And that rock will come tumbling down on you, kind of a thing. And that's what the other thing I found is that if I do music that I don't have to go, hey man, smoke a joint and listen to this, or get fucked up and listen to this. If I can really stay in touch with reality and the world and make that beautiful, and that's difficult, but there's a certain beauty in all things. People have said to me sometimes, well, how can there be a God when, and I'm not religious, I'm spiritual, I'm connected to the universe and all of you, according to Einstein's he calls it spooky action at a distance in physics. I won't get into that, but anyway, if I'm consciously connected and making everyday life interesting and enjoyable without altering my perception of things with a chemical, for me, things work better, but I'm not anti-drug at all. The thing I found is that, for the type of personality, and not even personality, the genetics that I have sort of tell me I need stuff outside of myself to be okay. And what I've noticed is, especially doing this music, is the simplest things are the most interesting. I now enjoy a vocal with especially some of these rappers really capture it. A mid-range that's not too uh, not too piercing and sharp and grating, and not too dull, just perfect with no effects on it, and like simple stuff like that. And just the pleasure of being present, and somebody said, well, how can there be a God? That's what I was going to say, when or how can there be any rhyme and reason to the universe when children are murdered, and horrible shit like that happens. And for me, what I do is I stand back and I just go, you know what? It helps me to know and understand that this is just the way the universe functions. Like that fucking asshole who shot them kids, Yeah, there's a thing of rage there, and you want to try to do everything you can to prevent that kind of thing. But just accepting and knowing how the universe functions is been really key for me, and it's helped me with hard things. It's like, yeah, sometimes people do the most horrible stuff that's completely unprovoked and uncalled for. That's just the way the universe functions. There's haters. When I step back, I can even see a certain beauty, and yeah, some fucking asshole stopped by and gave every single one of my songs a thumbs down. So what? It's kind of beautiful in a way, dumb mother. I mean, when you see that, well, the final thought on that is, I have a friend, and he said to me once, he's a Sikh, guys that wear the turbans and long beards and stuff, and cool guy, kind of a groovy hippie guy. I have a hunch he probably smoked weed at one time, but he said to me, if you're walking on the street and a man runs up to you and punches you in the face, it's your reaction to it that will sort of dominate who you are and the level of dignity and honor you have and so on, and understanding of things. He said you should praise the universe because it's functioning perfectly, exactly as it should. Those things happen. And to carry a sort of inward rage and attack yourself over it is just not the way to go. I'm not that spiritually enlightened. I would give that motherfucker a beat down like you wouldn't believe, but I understand his point. So anyway, man, with drugs, you got to figure those things. Most of life, you got to figure out for yourself. I think that's the key. I've figured out my own thing and the way the universe functions, and I'm convinced it works that way for everybody. But I can't tell anybody that. I can only, tell myself that. So, and as far as weed, fuck, man, if anything that becomes, it's totally cool with me. I don't do it, haven't for years. Makes me paranoid, robs me of my self-confidence, but and I'm prone to, once I do something, do it over and over. But if it works for you, good. I think when things stop working is when you got to always stand back and have the ability to stand back and go, is this working or not? Really, honestly, I'm not kidding myself, kind of a thing. And the proof in the pudding is getting shit done. It really is. So I get stuff done, and I am really super happy to live in this world for once and be a part of reality, even though I'm not really a part of society. I live completely alone and such. The best thing I have is, like, I have a strong grip on reality, which helps me when the haters and the bullshit that other people present comes my way. I'm able to say, well, yeah, but I'm here, I'm balanced, and that's just a bunch of fucking psychic garbage over there. And it really, for me, dealing with that kind of shit, it's always dependent upon the ever-changing sort of inner, if you want to call it that, spiritual condition, or really my ability to connect with the universe and the world around me in the way that I was meant to, So that is my 2 cents, I should do, on this one, I do endings on my vlog. This has some spiritual stuff. It's some spiritual stuff and shit. I should do Poltergeist and people. This house is clear.